So yeah, I'm trying to actually think like the best way to approach like learning a whole repertoire from scratch. Obviously, it's going to take a lot of patience and time and experience, but I think keeping E4 is probably the best option for you, given that you already have some experience in the Scotch. And what you mentioned, I think you mentioned it to me, but also your initial Reddit posts is like one of your goals is to play like the most beautiful chess possible.
Yeah.
And E4 definitely has a tendency to lead to just more fun, sharper positions. There's more gambits to choose.
Yeah, I'd like that's what I would like to have more fun positions. I think D4. I certainly haven't exhausted the possibilities of D4, nowhere near, but just the positions I was getting from the London system were quite similar each time. Like I was getting very similar structures, and I mean I was playing bullet chess, so obviously I wasn't
I
really
see.
going
Yeah,
into
it's
that
it's a good
depth.
opening for bullet because you can like blitz out the
Yeah, you can just play
first
the
like
moves. You don't have
10
to think about
moves.
it too. Yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah,
with
I'm happy to
E4,
stick with E4.
yeah, with E4, it's a lot more reactive to what the opponent will do. And the first thing to understand is when you're learning E4 or when you're learning any opening, you're not just learning one setup. Um, Ideally, you're going to be learning a bunch of different kind of types of weapons against the various options Black will play.
Okay.
So when you're building an opening repertoire, you'll want a weapon against the most common things that you'll run into. E5, of course, probably the most common move, and C5. These two will be maybe over 50% of the games that you play. So they're definitely the ones to focus on a bit more. But then also, like over time, it's good to learn something against the French and the Caro-Kann and the Scandinavian and the Alapin and the Pirates and the Modern. And I don't want to overwhelm you with just
No, that's fine.
The immense number of possibilities because it's
Yeah.
the nature of chess. But
Yeah.
as as you get more experience, hopefully you'll be able to keep incorporating like more and more opening ideas and weapons into your games.
Yeah. I think that's the beautiful thing. I was reading Ben Johnson's Perpetual Chess Improvement, and on the opening section, he was just talking about how anything you learn has it's going to be with you forever. You don't need to worry about rushing through this process. It's something which will slowly build over time. And yeah, I'm not too concerned with all the different ideas you just told me that weren't E4 and C4, but E5 and C5, because that's something that I can slowly build on over time.
Definitely, yeah. So against E4, E5, knight f3, knight c6. If you're already playing the Scotch, I'd recommend like continue to play it and then kind of get a sense of what players are doing most often against you. And I think
they're definitely taking with the pawn.
Yeah, almost always players will take.
Yeah,
if they don't take, then like there's not really any other good move for Black. Like maybe some players will play d6, but this is really passive.
Yeah, I've been taking the pawn. If they play d6, I would take the pawn with my pawn, the knight with my knight on e5, and then take the queen. So
yeah, sure. This is one fine approach. Like trade off everything, take away Black's casting rights, and then it's definitely a fight. There's other approaches too. Like probably one of the better moves is something like bishop to b5, where you keep the tension, and rather than trading off everything right away, where you're not winning anything against a weaker player, like it's easier to go wrong here as Black.
Okay, yeah, because and I'm developing as well, so.
And you're developing, yeah. So with most of the E4 openings that you play, like one of the main goals is to develop and castle as quickly as possible. And even up to players of like a 2000 level, sometimes they don't, like players don't develop quickly enough in the opening. And it's one of the main kind of pitfalls I see for a lot of like amateur level players. So
I found that moving from a faster time control to classical, I found that there's a psychological tendency for me to feel like I've got more time, like more time in the position because I have more time on the clock. So
I see. Okay.
there's almost like, oh, I can castle. I could castle now, but I could do this more fun move, and then I'll castle later, and I've got loads of time. But then obviously black or my opponent does something that forces me to react, and I realize, oh, I don't have time to castle. I'm gonna get trapped in the middle of the board. So that's an interesting
But
one.
this is how you learn. Like
Yeah,
if sometimes if you see an interesting option, it's good to go for it, maybe even if it is objectively bad, because
yeah,
then you'll learn why and then avoid the
yeah,
same
yeah,
mistake for the future.
yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
So yeah, if you're playing e4, like you'll reach this position a lot, and it's a good opening to kind of start learning the branches of. Like after takes, there are a few different options black can play in this position. And I don't think I want to dig too deep. I just kind of want to give you general overview here and make sure you just understand some basic lines. They can also test you too.
Yeah.
Let's say black plays bishop to c5. How would you react?
Oh, yeah, I've seen this as well. So some candidate moves I have are taking the knight on c6 because my knight is under pressure from these two pieces and only defended by the queen, or bishop to e3, defending the knight.
Yeah, you've identified like the two, I think two of the most popular moves in the
Yeah,
position.
you could also push the pawn. I'm just looking at that, but I don't know if that's I don't know if that's a good idea.
Out of these three moves, which move does it best with just following your early goals in the opening?
The bishop move. So developing a
Bishop e3,
piece.
like
Yeah.
develop, control the center. There's a bonus
The bishop
to
behind
this
is
move.
undefended. So we've got like we're threatening knight takes knight, winning the bishop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I have done that
And
once before.
if you play the Scotch enough, players are going to blunder in this position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not everyone, but like if black makes any move with this knight,
Yeah, exactly.
then you're immediately winning material. Like you take on c6, you win the bishop, and this is one very basic example of an opening trap that can hopefully win you like a decent number of games.
Yeah, I've already seen that happen, but yeah, it's like it wasn't a trap I set intentionally. So I'm just messing around with my camera. It wasn't a trap I set intentionally. It was just a trap which I happened upon, and my opponent didn't react.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, it's a nice one.
Yeah, but going forward in the future, like it's good to know about this position specifically because it's something that will happen so often.
Yeah.
If you do play the Scotch.
Nice.
Another way people can go wrong here, which doesn't actually lose material immediately for black, but it's a very bad move, is pawn d6. The question is, why is this so bad for black?
So the same idea would bring that pawn eventually to c5, which isn't terrible because it still controls the central square. So if knight takes, I'll just put it on the board so it's easy to see. So if knight takes knight, and then it's terrible. It's terrible because it triples black's pawns. Yeah, and they're isolated.
Exactly.
So that's probably
this
why.
is so much better for white because like going into this position, like okay, you throw in the queen trade.
Oh, I didn't even
these
notice
pawns
it was
are going to
still
be so weak.
white's go turn to move. So yeah, then it makes it even better.
Exactly. Yeah, you just like especially when the opponent's pawn structure is weak like this, the more trades that happen, the more it benefits the side who's playing against the weak pawns. And there's a nice move here. Rather than maybe playing the natural knight c3, of course you want to get the rook to d1 either by queenside castling or just by playing rook d1. I think the better move is actually to play knight d2, because you really want to attack the pawn as quickly as possible.
And that pawn can't be defended
you're still
by the
preparing
bishop.
castling.
Yeah, okay. Nice.
And it's very difficult for black to defend the pawn. It's true.
Very nice. I was actually thinking of playing bishop c4 at that moment instead of the knight move, just because I'm attacking a pawn. So it's like developing with tempo. But I like,
Oh, sure.
I like that move.
Yeah, actually, bishop c4 is also completely fine to start with too. Yeah, there's a number of good options for white.
Okay, nice.
So this is like a good kind of starting point for learning the Scotch, because it's nice to be armed with just a few like early traps that players could easily walk into.
Yep.
Of course, like a more prepared opponent and a much stronger player will not blunder here. The main move for black is queen f6, which
just adds another attacker.
It adds another attacker. It kind of gets out of the tactic with you threatening to take the knight.
Yeah.
Now it's no longer good for you to take the knight because you're not hitting the queen.
Yeah, exactly.
Black can then take the bishop, and
threatening
then
mate.
It's going to be you with probably having weak pawns.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. So
if you run into this move, then pawn c3. Okay, very simply reinforce your knight.
Yeah, and
it's a big focal point.
Yeah. If black starts taking, then we end up with a good center as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not really good for black to take on d4. And in the meantime, you're ready to like develop your bishop either to e2 or c4, castle. And I found that these positions, like going into the middle game, are a bit more pleasant for white, because very often the queen can be a target like later on, or you have ideas of f4 and e5. And white just has a bit more center too. Like one of the nice things about playing the Scotch, we just think from a pure structural standpoint, is when you have the pawn further advanced, you control more space. It's usually not easy for black to immediately challenge the pawn. So when it leads into a position like this, because you have more space, you have more room to develop your minor pieces. And sometimes black gets a little bit cramped with like completing development.
Yeah, especially with that queen move. The queen's on the knights, where the knight
blocks the knight.
Ideally want to be. Yeah, okay.
Black has to like play pretty precisely from here to be okay. Over time, like as you play more games and you get this sort of position more often, then you can definitely expand your repertoire. But if you just know like that this is the main line and you can just play chess from here, then I think that's a good starting point.
Fantastic. Yeah, happy with that.
So this is really like the first maybe pillar in your opening repertoire is the Scotch. I'm actually going to rename this first chapter in the study, and we'll just call it Scotch.
Nice.
The Scotch game. And with every opening that you're learning, it's good to have like some kind of saved analysis where you can perhaps add to it over time, especially with every game you play. Let's say you play a game that's in the Scotch and you encounter a line that we didn't look at, that maybe it's likely you'll encounter again. Then sometimes it's good to continually add to this chapter to just keep expanding your repertoire.
Yeah, brilliant. Like as a variation, so I would not making a new chapter, but just have everything about the Scotch in one chapter and then comment on variations.
Pretty much, yeah.
Nice.
Over time, sometimes analysis will get like very cluttered, and then you can sometimes just create different chapters for different variations in the Scotch.
Yeah, nice. Okay. That sounds good.
Like one branch that you might encounter against weaker players is knight takes knight.
Yeah, definitely. That's happens all the time. And then,
And this is just a big positional mistake. A lot of players might be excited that they're provoking you to bring out your queen early.
but there's no knight to attack it.
But
So
yeah, your queen is so happy in the center, and
yeah,
it restricts black from especially developing the bishop. And meanwhile, you're just going to be dominating the center. You have such easy development that yeah, like this is already super pleasant for white.
you know what? I've had this position a lot, and I kind of felt like because it was happening so often that I just didn't know some good prep, and people
Mm-hmm.
were just happy to bring my queen out, and there must be some line where it's just okay for black or a little bit better. But it's good to hear that actually it's just it's not good, and yeah, white is in a better position here.
Exactly. Yeah. So
I've never looked at the computer analysis here or spoken to anyone about it. So yeah, that's encouraging.
yeah, the engine will say like white's slightly better, which I think is a fair assessment. Like you're not winning, but it's a very good start to the game where uh like going forward, it's just so much easier to play.
Nice. Yeah.
And that's usually your goal with opening, is to just get a position where you have easy development, where you can pressure your opponent from early on. So we can take a few different approaches here. Like I can give you some recommendations in other e4 openings that you may encounter.
Yeah.
We can also talk about a black repertoire too. It's good to kind of I guess take it slowly and like take baby steps. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not something that you do overnight, is building a whole opening repertoire.
Yeah. Of
Like it
course.
does
Of
come
course.
with time.
No, I'm happy to stick with E4 and to look at a few more. Yeah, a few variations there.
Yeah, definitely. Are there any particular defenses for black that you're curious about, like that you maybe you're
Yeah.
encountering often that you want
Yeah. I'm
some
seeing the
advice for?
Sicilian, so I'm seeing C5 a
Right.
reasonable amount.
Gotcha. And
But
like
and I
normally you are playing knight f3.
yes.
Okay. And yeah, the tricky thing with the Sicilian is when you play knight f3 on move 2, there's a lot of different options for black. Like black can play d6 and e6 and g6 and knight c6 and a6, and it can already branch out a lot.
Yeah.
I've noticed that I think in a lot of your games that you're just playing open Sicilian, which I think is it's a very fine approach. It's similar to Scotch, which is nice.
Yeah. When I was just like, when
Um,
in doubt, get advance that pawn. It can be taken, but then I'm at least developing my bishop, and it's um I'm trying to push against the tendency I have to sort of play very quietly and passively. So
uh-huh.
I'm pushing against that and just yeah, maybe a little bit too brash with my lack of opening knowledge.
That's okay though. Like for the first maybe 4 years that I started playing chess, I had the same approach of like playing the open Sicilian, not knowing that much. Like I would usually against almost every variation, uh I would bring my knight here, put my bishops here, and castle.
Mm-hmm.
That's called the classical setup. And then it would just be a game.
Yeah.
And the game was almost never determined by the opening. At the same time, though, I wasn't really getting much early momentum from the opening. I was just kind of getting a playable position. So there's definitely options to try and put more pressure early on against your opponent.
Okay.
Um, and there's, I guess, a few recommendations I can give. Like, depending on what black plays, you don't always have to play d4. Now I'm showing d6 because it's probably the most common move that you'll run into. Like d6 and knight c6 are, I think, the most common moves.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an approach here which I think would be very effective and it kind of easier to play at your level, and also give your opponents a lot of like early challenges in the opening, is rather than playing d4 immediately, you can play this preparatory move c3.
Okay.
And the goal is to just control the center with the pawns. And if black allows you, let's say knight c6, you can play pawn d4. And the whole point is, rather than having to take back with a knight, you take back with a pawn. And if you get a position like this, you're already like very happy.
I'm happy. I'm happy with this.
Listen to it.
If I were to get this position, I'd be As soon as I got the pawn duo in the center, that looks good.
Yeah. I'm sorry to say that the audio issue came back. There's
Oh
like
no.
the echo again, and I'm not sure.
Yeah, this
I'm not
time
sure
it's
what's
not.
causing it.
Yeah, this time it wasn't a change. We didn't do anything.
No, no.
Mm.
It's really not that bad though.
We need an audio expert.
Yeah. So I think we're fine to continue, and
Let me
hopefully it's
just
still
try.
okay with the
I'm
recording.
recording. If I change my microphone, that might help. So if I do this, how does that sound?
It's still the same. I wonder if it's
Really?
let me
Let me
check my just want to troubleshoot my speakers here.
Is it both? Is it coming? Are both the versions of my voice happening in your earphones, or is one from your computer and one from the earphones?
You know what? It's a problem on my end. It's something with my AirPods.
Okay.
Let me switch back to, because I just switched my speaker and now it sounds fine. Can you talk again?
Yeah. How does that sound?
Okay, now it's completely fine. So I wonder if it's not actually being affected in the recording then. I think it's just like what I hear.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I just got I lost my previous AirPods case, had to get a new one, had to reconfigure them. So
Yeah.
something is a little bit messed up.
That. Okay, it's good. I always think it's definitely worth resolving those things. It's not. It's such.
For sure.
Yeah, it's such a hard. Like for audio to be slightly wonky or to hear a beeping sound or something, it's like no, don't accept that. We need to we need to solve that.
Of course, yeah. Anyway, yeah, back to this.
Okay,
This
so
opening is
yeah,
the c3 move.
Like
It's maybe not something that you've even considered before, but
I haven't ever
very effective.
considered it, but I do. I have seen white playing that when I'm playing c5,
I see.
and but not in this move order. I think I've seen it when yeah, straight away. So I think here, and then my yeah.
Yeah, so c3 right away it's called the Alapin Sicilian.
Yeah. I have
And
come across it before. And then I want to play as black, I want to play knight f6.
yep,
Challenging that pawn so that this can't happen straight away, so that d4 can't happen straight away. And then
right.
you have to sort of like react to that and then you go here maybe. So
Yeah, this is like the main topical line that grandmasters will play in the Alapin Sicilian.
Yeah, this is my my vague memory from the Sam Shanklin short and sweet course, but
I see. Okay.
But to be honest, I haven't ever considered to play it as white, and I totally should, because yeah, it puts it's potentially, if they don't play the best moves, then you're like you say, building a strong center.
Right. And I'd say the philosophy with this opening is when you play c3 on move 2 or c3 on move 3, you're trying to steer the game into your own comfort zone rather than your opponent's comfort zone. Like usually when you play open Sicilian, then your opponent will be happy to like play the dragon or the Najdorf, or they're like, a lot of Sicilian players are very passionate about whatever variation they choose.
Okay.
But when you don't play the open Sicilian and you play, this is called an anti-Sicilian, where you avoid playing like the mainstream thing.
I see. Okay.
You're basically keeping the game on your own turf.
Nice.
And then your opponent has to react a lot differently because yeah, d4 is a pretty big positional threat. And there are ways for black to properly handle this, but a lot of amateur players will not have studied this position. So
Okay, good.
like sometimes the worst case scenario is your opponent might try and surprise you somehow, and then you'll both be on your own turf. But the ideas are, I think, quite natural for whites. Like very often you do want to play this move pawn d4. And I can show you like one of the basic lines to know. It's one of the most critical lines
Yeah,
because
show me.
pretty much against any move that black plays, like all these moves that I'm highlighting, you'll just play d4. One of the only moves black can play that prevents you from playing d4 is knight f6.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this is a move to pretty much focus on, because now if you play d4, you lose your pawn.
Yeah.
And the way that white can approach this position is pretty cool, because it's definitely not the most natural approach, but you take advantage of some cool tactics here. And the thing to understand is that when black plays this move, it does prevent d4. Black creates a situation where if you play d4, they're going to take your pawn.
Mm-hmm.
But black's not actually threatening to take the pawn right away, because queen a4 check
Nice. Yeah.
will win the knight. So when you play d4, you're actually depriving yourself of queen a4 because you obstruct the fourth rank.
Okay.
So the move that you can play here is actually a very simple developing move, bishop e2. This is where I would like to say, oh no, my pawn.
Yeah.
Maybe some amateur players will take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
On Lichess, I don't know if you ever used like the opening database. The opening
Only
book.
recently, yeah. I mean, I just today actually, I was looking at some of my games from the weekend and trying to get a sense of like what people are playing against the Queen's Gambit accepted, that kind of thing. So yeah, literally just in the last few days. Yeah. Would you? So at my level, this is something I've been looking at. So, so masters here will play G6 more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what your recommendation is to when using this kind of tool. Obviously, I'm not playing masters. I'm not even close, and it completely changes. So by far now, about a similar sort of proportion of playing knight c6. So I don't know whether to, and like you can even change this. Yeah, so
you
can
can
change.
toggle between masters and Lichess. Lichess will kind of show what the average player will play.
Okay, yeah, and like remove bullet, for example, that kind of thing.
You can filter out, yeah, the faster time controls. And it can sometimes be nice to see the stats too. Like if there's a line where white scores really well, then it's a sign that you might want to try and steer the game towards that particular variation.
Yeah, nice. Like in this case, yeah, c6, and then white scores really well because of the actually, wait a sec, knight c6. Oh no, I'm being silly. Sorry. Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I was just confused for a second.
Yeah, it's okay. I wanted to just point out that if you look in the Lichess database, there you can kind of see the percentage of people falling into the trap is 15% of people over 130,000 games.
Yeah.
Featured knight takes e4, and then white has like a very high winning percentage here. And
yeah, I want to see how many people then. Yeah, 98%. 98% see it. That's quite high. I thought it'd be lower actually.
Well, most people who play bishop e2 will know this trap.
They know
you're not playing bishop e2 if you haven't seen this before.
These poor souls, these 571, they're just like, damn, I lost the pawn. I guess I'll play. Yeah. I guess I'll play d4. Okay, yeah, that's funny. Oh wow!
But most people will play knight c6, and like the nice thing that the database will kind of show you is what moves are most likely, and it kind of gives you some direction into which variations to maybe study deeper and to be prepared for.
Yeah, nice.
But
So in
the
this case,
one of the issues
now
with
the take's still
the
on.
database.
Oh, sorry, carry on.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say that the database won't tell you why moves are being played. They'll just give you kind of the stats. But sometimes you can kind of play through the lines to figure it out.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's like when you see an engine
And
line, you want to see you want to see why the engine's recommending a particular move, not just, oh, okay, this is better for some in a mysterious reason.
exactly, it's like sometimes you have to play through like 3, 4, 5 moves ahead to actually figure out the reason. So here, I'll go ahead and explain that knight c6 allows you to expand with d4.
Okay, give me a second.
And the question is why?
Yeah. Because if knight takes e4, because if knight takes e4, then you can push the pawn to d4. Sorry, you can queen to a4 first, pinning the knight on c6, and then I think whatever black plays next. No, not necessarily. Black can just run back. I wanted to do so if takes, then this queen to a4, and I was thinking, okay, I've got pressure on this knight x-raying the pawn, but the pawn is in the way. And then if it was my move, I would just go like pawn d4 here, attacking the pinned
On d5, yeah.
Sorry, pawn d5. Yeah, attacking the pinned knight and then unleashing the attack on this knight. But I don't think it quite works because there's just not enough time. I think black can just go back. But then the pawn still
black can go
works.
back to f6 and cover.
But then, no, because then you can take. Okay, so that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
I'll say that you have exactly the right idea, but the wrong execution.
Yeah. Okay. How about the same idea but with a bishop, maybe? My bishop.
So, and when I say this,
Yeah.
that you have the right idea and wrong execution, that should be kind of a signal that
Move order.
you should change up the move order.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Exactly. Okay. So yeah. Nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Pawn push first, and then
Make the knight move, clear the diagonal for the king, and then queen a4 check. Yeah. And this is a case where black's losing a knight guaranteed. Like there's no way to save both knights.
This is cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. So if you move this knight to back to where it started, then yeah, the fork's back on. Very nice.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so it's a nice
like
opening trap. Like you won't get every game against Sicilian, but again, if you play this enough, like players do stumble into this.
But even if it's
15% of people take here.
I think the great thing is even if they don't take, it means I can play d4. Whereas I would just, if I didn't know about this trap, I just never would be able to play d4. I like,
exactly.
This kind of thing is perfect because I want to be able to learn how to play the moves I want to play anyway. And then every so often I can do that because there's a cool tactic, which I don't need that to work. I don't need them to fall for it for the whole thing to work, which is nice.
Right. And very often like players won't fall for it. And then you'll just be controlling the center and have hopefully a nice position going into the middle game.
I think I'll need to remember.
I'll say that most players take
okay
on d4.
Mm-hmm.
You can just take back, and the same idea is still present. If they take, you still play d5. And most players do take in this position.
And
then you play d5. Now this variation, it's a little bit different because there was a trade of pawns. Black has an additional option here.
The arrow is annoying me because it's ruining the surprise. The queen can check.
You might have like the arrows turned on, but
let me just check. I'll just change that. Best move arrow. Turn that off. Okay, yeah. So queen check.
So queen check, and yeah, now like it's a little bit messy, and you're not actually winning material, but white's still getting a fine position.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a variation here. You can block the check. Okay, you're still attacking the knight.
Yeah.
But there's, of course, this pressure between the knights. Black will usually take, you'll take, and then if black takes here,
Block with the bishop. Tempo on the
it looks
queen.
scary, but you block with the bishop and then you attack,
Nice.
you defend, you're still attacking. There's been like over 3,000 games that have reached this position. White scores very, very well from here.
And then you are up a
So
piece
black
at the end of
should
that.
move the knight.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
okay. In that, yeah, if they get greedy and they take the pawn thinking they've got a tempo on me, then yeah, I can take the knight. But otherwise they should in this position move the knight.
They should move the knight.
Yep, nice.
And the line goes on for here. I'll show that like knight e5 is the most common move. You take, and then what black can do, rather than taking the knight right away, black can take on c3.
Ah, yes,
And then
then win the
recapture
knight
the
with the queen,
queen.
not mess up their pawn structure.
And this is actually like a pretty deep opening variation. It has a name. It's called the Basman-Palatnik double Gambit. And it's an opening that I discovered like years ago. I went through a brief phase of playing. But the idea is you willingly enter this position. Black can win another pawn on d5. White is down 3 pawns in this position.
Have you made a video about this before?
No, actually,
it's got
I
reasonably
haven't.
popular.
There's another creator that has though.
Okay, yeah.
Have to find the video. I really should, but because there's very few gambits in chess where it's okay to willingly sacrifice 3 pawns in the opening. The reason why white's okay here is because black is severely underdeveloped, and you have so many files to control. Like every pawn lost is a file opened.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, it looks it looks a bit ridiculous.
So I think that was actually good timing with ending the variation here.
Yeah, 3 pawns down,
that,
but actually doing quite well.
and there's been a handful of like master level games. Like white wins more often here because it can be very difficult for black to actually complete development. Like there's I think rook c1 and ideas of bishop f3 to follow, and there's going to be a lot of pressure coming in from like multiple directions. And sometimes when I'm like building out my opening repertoire and we reach maybe some position that can branch out in different ways, I like to just draw arrows on the board to demonstrate the key ideas.
Yeah, that kind of helps.
To be prepared for like where the pieces should end up going.
So would black be happy just to lose? Would white be happy to gambit that fourth and final pawn in this line?
Actually, that's true. Like if queen takes a2, I think this is way too greedy.
I know, but it's crazy.
Then
it's just crazy that you can do that, and it's not just that you can do it, but you're doing it and winning quite significantly.
We can have fun imagining like how black will just get crushed here. I mean, first of all, bishop b5 check will take away black's casting rights. There's also bishop c4. Looking for games that there's been 4 games in Lee chess with bishop b5 check. White wins every single one. And I think, yeah, this is the most natural line. Like you provoke the king to d7, and then I'll test you in this position. It's white to move.
Wait to turn off the arrows.
And,
for some reason, I think it's just, I don't know if it's show variation.
Oh, you might have the engine turned on.
I do, yes, you're right. But then
So if you
I
if you
think
disable the
I,
engine, it'll
I think
stop.
it's just because I'm looking at all it was is I was looking at the lead chess database to see what was the most popular move. I'll just quickly turn the book. I'll
I
close
see.
the book. Okay, cool. But yeah, I did see that the most popular move was Queen G4, which makes sense because
Queen G4 check.
Queen G4 check exactly because then you're eyeing up the C8 square. So if the king moves to back to E8, then you have checkmate with rook C8 check. Rook takes C8 and queen takes C8 checkmate.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
so the king should move. So then you've either got so if queen G4 check, you can either move the king to D8 so that checkmate doesn't that that doesn't work. Um,
Hmm.
push the pawn to D7, blocking the check, or bring the queen back to D7. Oh, sorry, both those D6. Pawn to D6 and queen to D6. E6. I'm terrible with my coordinates. I'll get
Yeah,
better at
no
that.
worries. You're welcome to draw arrows too if that's easier
Yeah,
to
so
like kind of
either
go through
either
what you're
that.
thinking.
I have a friend who keeps asking me to say the coordinates, and I'm like, okay, I need to just keep saying the coordinates. I'll get there.
Which can be a good habit though.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you'll eventually get used to it.
Um, so if
I think
pawn
I'll go ahead
pushed,
and say
mm-hmm.
that like Queen G4, like it's good that you're looking at all the branches and kind of going down
Yep,
the forcing variations. Um, there's a tip when it comes to calculation, like there's
yep,
kind of a balance between going deep into one variation
mm-hmm.
or just kind of taking a step back and looking at your other options before you
Yep,
go to
yep.
them.
Okay, that's a good point.
And like Queen G4, it's a move here, and um, it's been played with good success. But there's
Mm.
another move which I think is more effective.
Okay.
I'm realizing that this position can be still hard to calculate because there's going to be like regardless of what you play, there's different variations that black can choose.
Actually, yeah, queen. Yeah, good point. Good point. So, queen f3 attacks two pawns that are both unprotected, and the b pawn on b7 is particularly, um,
Vulnerable.
yeah, well, yeah, it's particularly vulnerable because it's like a particularly tough spot for black because behind it is an unprotected rook, so you can't just push it in
It's
response.
pinned. It's yeah.
Yeah, it's pinned, and if I did take it, it would be check and like really close to the king, giving the king not very many options to go running away.
Mhm.
Okay, so what would black do in response to queen f3? I think you've got to.
It turns out Queen F3 is like super powerful because whatever black
Makes
does,
sense.
there's gonna be options for white. I want to correct one thing that you said. You
Mm-hmm.
said you're attacking two undefended pawns.
Ah, yes, you the
F7 is
queen.
actually defended.
The
Like
queen's got it. Yeah,
it's
yeah.
so easy to
Whole
like
board
not
awareness.
see the whole board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, no, good correction. That's the kind of correction I need in a game. Like, oh, it's not. It is protected. Okay, that's a
Yeah,
good point.
but there's cases where like if black moves back to a6 to defend b7,
Yes.
then you win f7. So the
Yeah.
queen is a bit tied down.
Yeah. It's the least happy defended pawn because it's defended by a queen that really wants to go and do other things.
Exactly. We should also note here, like when you play queen f3, you're leaving your bishop undefended,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but you make it so if black takes, then you take, and you're gonna start consuming and destroying the
Yep.
king.
Yep.
King e6 probably has to be played.
Yep.
So, um, so when you play queen f3, the best try for black looks to be rook b8,
Quite a sad move to
which
play
does defend the pawn, gets off the diagonal.
and renews the threat of the bishop.
Correct.
Okay.
And in this position, I also wanted to kind of make the note that like if you had started with Queen G4, Black plays E6, you're not really accomplishing that much. Like
Yeah,
maybe
just
there
a,
were options for Black to go wrong there,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but if you give Black time to make a very useful move and then get the bishop into play and connect the rooks,
Mm-hmm.
then your advantage could very quickly dissipate.
Okay, good point.
So if Rook B8, I want you to try and find the next move. Like you definitely want to keep your foot on the gas and
Yeah.
look for a way to make another threat in the position.
So I want to go. Well, the first I won't go too deep into this line to take your advice, but
Sounds
I
good.
want to go Queen Queen F5 check. The same thing can happen, but this time I have Queen B5 check, and this king. There's no pawn to push in front of that queen. There's no way to escape to a cozy hiding spot on E8. So the king will. I mean, and you can't go either any of these squares. And you just pushed your pawn here, so you can't go to any. Yeah, you have one square. Okay, so yeah, I think that looks good.
Honestly,
And
I like I like the thought process with Queen F5. Like you put Black in a very difficult spot where they have to choose an ugly move, and Queen
yeah,
B5 is coming. Um,
but there's
it's
another
actually
move.
not the move I was even thinking of.
Okay, but I'll try and find your move then. I'll try and find your move. So that's one.
Yeah.
That's my first. That was my intuition that the sort of double check. Well, not double check. The check and then the other check. Okay, so okay, and then instead I'm going to sacrifice my bishop because why not? We've already lost 4 pawns, and play Rook A1. If Black takes the bishop, then Rook A7.
Mhm.
Putting loads of extra pressure on this
I'll
pawn.
tell you, I think that this is a little bit too much.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
like
I was just trying to find something which you were
you
like, yeah,
do
and
win the
then
pawn back.
we sacrificed the
It
whole
looks
left side of
cool.
the board. Okay, that is too much. That is too much. I agree. I couldn't think of a follow up after that move either. You could just come back and defend that pawn with the queen. Okay.
So I'll go ahead and say here that yeah, like obviously you're drawn to looking towards the direct attacks, like Rook A1 attacks the queen, Queen F5 is immediate check.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another type of move here which just sets up like a very deadly threat, and you can use a C file. Of course, your rook is nicely placed, but you would really like to get your queen to C7 is one of the key squares to exploit that Black might have a hard time covering.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
I hadn't really considered that, which is now you say it's very obvious. So yeah, Queen C3 defends the
so Queen
bishop.
C3 accomplishes
Yeah.
this threat.
Nice. Defends the
And
bishop as
like once you
well.
consider this move, you'll realize that Black doesn't have a good way to prevent Queen C7.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I want to take a small step back. We've gone very far into the rabbit hole of like this whole opening variation and sacking 3 pawns and deep Gambit analysis. But this is a great example of how the opening can kind of be the gateway to like very interesting tactical positions. And then
Mhm.
you're not just picking up an opening lesson here, you're picking up like how to convert a position when you have the initiative and you're down material, but you have to be aggressive. So hopefully this will give like some inspiration
Yeah, I like it.
for playing this line and getting such positions.
Yeah. I'll message you when I get this line for the first time. Like, it's happening. It's move
Looking forward,
17 and
yeah,
I'm still prepared. Okay, nice.
yeah. 17 moves of opening prep would be pretty sweet.
Yeah,
But
it'll happen. It'll happen at some point. I'll just keep firing away at the same opening. Okay,
very
very cool.
often, like it's a good first step, and more likely your opponents will deviate sometime before move 17, and you'll be on your own. But at least hopefully you'll have kind of the right tools and the right thought process to still play good chess.
Yeah, definitely. But that's the thing. I think that's the reason why I'm now I can see why so many people are drawn into learning openings when I just haven't been
Mhm.
previously. Partly it's because it's nice to have the control at the beginning and feel like, okay, I know I can just memorize a bunch of stuff and then I get the idea. But the thing that's tempting me now is that I don't like the idea of just memorizing moves, but to learn ideas that make up this opening and to learn, okay, well, this is the kind of middle game you get. And
Definitely.
White's plan is to do this. I much prefer to learn that kind of thing. And in this case, yeah, we've lost a load of pawns, but we've got, like you said, you had all those arrows, like a load of open lines and loads of initiative. The king's not very safe, etc. So, and even in this case,
Yeah.
I don't even remember where we equalized material. Oh no, we didn't, because we've just lost loads of pawns because I remember that line where we were down. We were up a piece, but that was just a different line.
That was a different branch. Yeah, that
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah,
pretty early on. And nice thing here with the Lichess study, you can kind of review the variations that we just looked at.
yeah.
And the main line is, of course, the most critical, but the branches with like knight takes e4 are, of course, the traps that black can fall into. And yeah, part of the process and learning and opening is just to like start playing it in a bunch of games, and then
Yeah.
um, any games that your opponent plays something maybe new or surprising, definitely make note of, maybe save to a different study where you're actually um, you're compiling your games in the Scotch and Sicilian, or all your E4 openings, and then we can definitely go from there and expand. And
Nice. I'll do
I
that.
can always come back and show you more lines too that will hopefully give you more inspiration.
Nice. Brilliant. And would you recommend for me to keep this all on Lichess? I think I do prefer. I use Lichess a lot. But you think that it's worth keeping all the variations in here, and you don't recommend any other. I wouldn't obviously go into like chess base now, but you would use Lichess over any other sort of non-chess based software at the moment.
Yeah, I think Lichess is by far the most user friendly, and
Yeah,
there's a lot of features that we can also dive into with Lichess. With like kind of, I mean, it seems like already you know how to make annotations and kind of
yeah,
clean up the
yeah.
PGN and everything.
I do really like Lichess. I have a natural. I
Yeah.
think when I started playing, the main reason I started using it over chess.com was just because at the time I think chess.com's bullet um, functionality wasn't great, and the pieces just that seemed to be that subtle lag, and I think they cleaned that up. But on the phone,
A
I
bit
don't
different for
think.
bullet, right?
Crazily, I just played bullet on the phone all the time. So on the phone, you can't actually get the um, animation of the pieces to be like instant. It still animates them,
Uh,
and well, at least I've never
that's not
figured
good
out
for
how to do.
bullet.
Not
Yeah,
good for bullet. No, you feel like you're just slightly like you're just seeing stuff with a bit of a delay,
I see.
which is crazy. Um, but yeah, I've always really liked Lichess. So yeah, I'm very happy to have all my studies on here.
Yeah, and it's like it's easy to make different types of studies for different purposes, like have one study for your white openings, which I guess could be this one because we
Mhm.
already gave you
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah.
analysis in Scotch and Sicilian.
Nice,
And then, of course, another study for black openings, and then your games as well. So that way you can stay organized.
brilliant. Yeah, I'm excited. This is the beginning of my repertoire.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah, it's I look forward to seeing your games, and hopefully you can get some maybe similar lines, maybe some of the exact lines that we looked at today.
I'm gonna get the delayed Alapin variation, Basman-Palatnik double Gambit.
Yeah.
That's what I had to click onto the page which I opened earlier because
Oh, sure.
I will not remember the name of that for a while. But yeah, I'll get that and I'll shoot you a message, let you know.
All right. Yeah, sounds good. Awesome.
Brilliant. All right, thanks so much. This has been a great first lesson, and I will I'll build out this a little bit, and I will look to my tournament games over the weekend to see if any of the lines from there I can sort of put in and say, okay, well, they did this. I need to prepare for this kind of this kind of move or this kind of idea out of the opening, and then add it in here.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds good. And I think going forward, like with future sessions, it's good to maybe identify beforehand like what openings you might want to expand further with,
Yep.
or which, like if you have games that you're really curious about, like what you should do differently or how you should handle something early on, then those will be good to focus on for future sessions.
Nice. Okay. And so I'll send you those then. So should I give you a sense of like these are the things I'd like to focus on, and then give you the game that sparked that idea, for example?
Yeah, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Nice.
And feel free to like share a new study with me, and that way I can keep an eye on it too.
Nice. Brilliant. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And
Yeah, my
yeah, I
pleasure.
will
Yeah, we'll be in touch.
yeah, brilliant. All right. Chat soon, Eric. Have a lovely evening.
All right, you too, Ben. Take care.